Sienna Blake had always been the dependable one, the woman people turned to when the stakes were high and the pressure was unbearable. A talented marketing strategist in a bustling corporate firm in New York City, she poured her heart into every project, staying late into the night and putting her personal life on hold to ensure her team's success. But dedication wasn't enough to shield her from betrayal. Her story began like any other career-driven woman's dream: hard work, recognition, and the hope that merit would win the day. Sienna's innovative campaign for a high-profile client had put her on the radar of senior management, and she'd been led to believe that a long-overdue promotion was within reach. The head of the department, Ethan Hart, a man she once admired for his charm and intellect, assured her that the board had noticed her efforts. She trusted him, never suspecting the knife he was preparing to plunge into her back. The betrayal came swift and brutal. At a pivotal meeting with the client, Ethan presented her work as his own. Not a single acknowledgement, not a passing nod to her months of effort. It was as if she didn't exist. The client was thrilled, the board applauded, and Ethan basked in the glory. Sienna sat there frozen, her stomach churning with disbelief as her colleagues exchanged knowing glances, too spineless to speak up. It was a moment that crushed her faith in the fairness of the world she'd built her life around. But Sienna wasn't one to wallow in self-pity for long. That night, as she sat in her tiny apartment overlooking the glittering Manhattan skyline, something inside her snapped. The sting of humiliation burned away, replaced by a steely resolve. Ethan had underestimated her, and that was his first mistake. If he wanted to play dirty, Sienna would show him she could outmaneuver him at every turn. The corporate battlefield became her chessboard, and she began plotting her moves meticulously. Every slight she'd endured, every deceitful smile Ethan had flashed her, fueled her determination. She wouldn't just reclaim what was hers. She would expose Ethan for the fraud he was and dismantle the power he wielded. By the time she was done, they'd all know the price of underestimating Sienna Blake. Sienna Blake had always believed in the value of hard work and integrity, but Ethan Hart's betrayal shattered that belief. The days following the fateful meeting were a blur of whispered conversations, sympathetic glances, and crushing silence. Her colleagues avoided eye contact, their complicity written all over their faces. She felt like a ghost in the office, her contributions erased as though they'd never existed. The campaign she'd poured her soul into was now being touted as Ethan's crowning achievement, his ticket to an executive promotion. The betrayal didn't just impact her professionally, it seeped into every aspect of her life. The late nights she'd spent refining strategies and perfecting presentations had already taken a toll on her relationships. Friends stopped calling after countless canceled plans, and her family, though supportive, grew tired of her excuses. Now, with Ethan's treachery looming over her, she felt completely alone. At first, Sienna was consumed by despair. She replayed the scene in her mind endlessly, dissecting every moment, every word she could have said to call Ethan out in the meeting. The humiliation cut deep, but what hurt more was the realization that she'd trusted him. Ethan had been a mentor, someone who once seemed to value her talent and ambition. To discover that he'd been using her all along was a bitter pill to swallow. Sleep became a distant memory. Her apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison. The walls seemed to close in on her as she paced the small living room, her mind racing with a chaotic mix of anger and helplessness. But as the days turned into weeks, her despair began to evolve. What started as a gnawing sadness transformed into a simmering rage. Late one night, Sienna sat at her desk, staring at the documents she'd collected over the past year, emails, drafts, project timelines, all proof of her contributions to the campaign. Her hands trembled as she sifted through them, her anger bubbling to the surface. She realized that while Ethan had stolen her credit, he hadn't anticipated her resilience. It was then that the seeds of her revenge began to take root. Sienna didn't have to confront Ethan directly, not yet. Instead, she would gather more evidence, bide her time, and build an airtight case that would expose him. She started to take note of his patterns. The way he manipulated people, the shortcuts he took, the lies he told to climb the corporate ladder. Sienna also began to observe the power dynamics within the office more closely. Ethan wasn't the only one with influence, and she knew that alliances could be made if she played her cards right. Subtle conversations with colleagues revealed cracks in Ethan's carefully curated image. Some resented him for taking credit for their work. Others had stories of their own betrayals. Sienna listened carefully, offering quiet support while mentally cataloging every useful detail. Though she kept her emotions in check outwardly, the fire inside her burned brighter with every passing day. She started working on a side project after hours, an initiative that could rival the campaign Ethan had stolen. It was risky, but Sienna knew that innovation was her strength. If she could pull it off, she wouldn't just recover from Ethan's betrayal. She'd outshine him entirely. Still, the emotional toll was undeniable. There were nights when she broke down in tears, overwhelmed by the weight of her anger and the uncertainty of her plan. But each time, she reminded herself why she couldn't give up. Ethan's betrayal had cost her more than just a promotion. It had cost her dignity, her confidence, and her faith in the system. Taking him down wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming her power. The first real test of her resolve came during an office event celebrating the campaign's success. Ethan stood at the center of the room, basking in the praise of executives, while Sienna lingered on the outskirts, a glass of wine clutched tightly in her hand. As she watched him smile and shake hands, a part of her wanted to storm up to him and expose him right then and there. But she knew it wasn't the right time. She needed to be patient, to strike when the impact would be irreversible. The moment she stepped outside into the cool night air, she made herself a promise. Ethan Hart had underestimated her for the last time. She wasn't just going to take back what was hers. She was going to dismantle the very foundation of power he'd built on lies. Sienna's path forward wasn't going to be easy, but she was prepared for the battle ahead. The betrayal might have broken her momentarily, but it had also awakened something within her, a drive, a cunning, and a determination that even she hadn't known she possessed. And as the lights of the city glimmered around her, she couldn't help but smile. Ethan had no idea what was coming. Sienna Blake wasn't just driven by anger. She was fueled by purpose. The betrayal had knocked her down, but it hadn't broken her. As she sat at her desk late one evening, her apartment bathed in the soft glow of her computer screen, she began laying the foundation of her plan. Revenge, she decided, wouldn't be a single act of retribution. It would be a symphony carefully orchestrated and executed with precision. The first step was gathering resources. Sienna combed through every email, every memo, and every presentation she'd worked on over the past year. She created a digital archive of evidence, a trail that proved her authorship of the campaign Ethan had stolen. But she knew that documents alone wouldn't be enough. She needed people who could corroborate her story and perhaps expose other skeletons in Ethan's closet. Her first potential ally was Ava, a data analyst who had quietly voiced her frustrations with Ethan during office happy hours. Sienna approached Ava cautiously, inviting her out for coffee one afternoon under the guise of catching up. As they talked, Sienna subtly steered the conversation toward Ethan. Ava's guarded expression melted into one of irritation as she recounted her own experience of being overlooked and undermined by him. "Do you ever feel like he's untouchable?" Ava asked, stirring her coffee absently. "Maybe," Sienna replied, her tone measured. "But what if he's not? What if we could do something about it?" Ava hesitated, glancing around the cafe as if to ensure no one could overhear them. "You really think that's possible?" Sienna leaned in slightly, her voice steady. "I don't just think it's possible, I know it is. But I can't do it alone." As Sienna built her network of allies, she also honed her strategy. She knew she couldn't rely solely on Ethan's past misdeeds to bring him down. She needed to outshine him in the present. That's when she began conceptualizing a new campaign, one that would not only showcase her talents, but also highlight Ethan's lack of originality. Her nights became a whirlwind of brainstorming and meticulous planning. She worked tirelessly to craft a pitch that was bold, innovative, and impossible to ignore. Sienna poured her creativity into every detail, ensuring the campaign would resonate with both the board and their high-profile clients. But amidst her determination, a moral dilemma began to take root. Late at night, when the city's hum quieted and her thoughts grew louder, she questioned her motives. Was she justified in seeking revenge, or was she becoming the very thing she despised? Sienna wrestled with these thoughts during a conversation with her sister, Mia, a social worker who often saw the best in people. "Do you think I'm wrong for wanting to take him down?" Sienna asked one evening, her voice heavy with doubt. Mia studied her carefully. "I think you're human. But ask yourself this: are you doing this to make things right, or just to hurt him?" The question lingered in Sienna's mind, adding complexity to her mission. She resolved to focus on justice rather than vengeance, but the lines often blurred. As weeks turned into months, Sienna's preparation gained momentum. She uncovered evidence of financial discrepancies tied to Ethan's handling of company funds. With Ava's help, she traced the irregularities to a secret account Ethan had been using to pad his bonuses. It was a risky find, but one that could destroy his career if presented to the right people. Sienna also began subtly undermining Ethan's credibility. During meetings, she would ask pointed questions that revealed his lack of understanding of key details she knew he'd overlooked because he hadn't actually done the work. She framed it as professional curiosity, but the seeds of doubt were planted in the minds of their colleagues. Her campaign project, meanwhile, was nearing completion. It was a testament to her brilliance, blending creativity with data-driven insights in a way that left no room for misinterpretation. Sienna didn't just want to prove her worth. She wanted to create something so groundbreaking that even Ethan couldn't take credit for it without being exposed. By the time her plan was fully in motion, Sienna had transformed. She was no longer the woman who let others dictate her worth. She was a strategist, a leader, and a force to be reckoned with. Ethan might have played her for a fool, but he had no idea he was now a pawn in her game. As she stood in the office one evening, looking out over the city skyline, Sienna felt a surge of confidence. The path ahead wasn't without risk, but she was ready. Her allies were in place, her evidence was undeniable, and her campaign was flawless. The day of reckoning arrived on a crisp Monday morning, the kind of day that promised renewal or destruction. Sienna Blake stepped into the conference room with an air of calm confidence that belied the storm she was about to unleash. She had spent months preparing for this moment, meticulously laying every brick of her plan, and now the final piece was about to fall into place. The room was filled with the company's top executives, all gathered for the quarterly review. Ethan Carter, seated at the head of the table, wore his trademark smirk, a picture of unwarranted self-assurance. Sienna took a seat directly across from him, her carefully crafted presentation materials in hand. "Let's begin," Ethan said, his tone dismissive. He had no idea what was coming. Sienna's presentation started smoothly, showcasing her groundbreaking campaign. The room was captivated as she walked through the innovative strategies and data-backed projections. She could feel the energy shift, her colleagues were impressed, and even the usually stoic board members leaned forward with interest. When she reached the climax of her presentation, Sienna paused, letting the silence hang in the air for a moment before delivering her final blow. "Before I wrap up, I want to take a moment to address some discrepancies I've discovered during this campaign's development," she said, her voice steady but pointed. Ethan's smirk faltered slightly. He shifted in his chair, clearly caught off guard. Sienna pulled up a new slide, revealing a detailed breakdown of financial irregularities tied to Ethan's management. The room fell silent as she walked them through the evidence: unauthorized transfers, falsified expense reports, and a secret account Ethan had been using to line his pockets. "This isn't just about the money," Sienna continued. "It's about the integrity of our leadership and the impact it has on our team's morale and trust." Ethan's face turned a shade paler with each passing second. He stammered, attempting to deny the allegations, but Sienna wasn't done. She handed out a packet of documents to the board members, each page meticulously annotated with evidence of Ethan's misconduct. To her surprise, Ella and Jacob, her allies, chimed in, sharing their own experiences of being undermined and exploited by Ethan. Their voices added weight to the accusations, turning the tide firmly against him. But just as it seemed Ethan was cornered, he made a desperate move. "This is absurd," he barked, rising from his chair. "You think you're some kind of hero? You fabricated all of this to make me look bad." Sienna locked eyes with him, her calm demeanor unwavering. "You're welcome to defend yourself, Ethan, but the evidence speaks for itself." In a last-ditch effort to discredit her, Ethan claimed that her campaign was plagiarized, accusing her of stealing ideas from competitors. For a brief moment, doubt flickered in the room. Sienna had anticipated this. With a steady hand, she pulled out a sealed envelope containing time-stamped drafts, client feedback, and her own handwritten notes proving the originality of her work. She laid them on the table, a visual testament to her integrity. The tension in the room was palpable. Ethan's voice cracked as he tried to defend himself, but his arguments grew weaker with each word. Finally, the CEO spoke up. "Ethan," she said, her voice laced with disappointment, "this company values trust and accountability. Your actions have not only betrayed that trust, but also jeopardized our reputation. Effective immediately, you're relieved of your duties." The room erupted in murmurs as Ethan was escorted out, his bravado replaced by humiliation. As the door closed behind him, Sienna felt a surge of emotions: relief, satisfaction, and an unexpected twinge of sadness. She had won, but the cost of her victory weighed heavily on her. In the days that followed, the fallout from Ethan's downfall rippled through the company. Sienna's campaign was celebrated, earning her a promotion and widespread recognition. But amidst the accolades, she couldn't ignore the moral complexities of her journey. One evening, as she reflected on the events, Ava joined her. "You did the right thing," Ava said. "He needed to be stopped." "Maybe," Sienna replied, staring out at the city lights. "But I can't help wondering if there was a better way." Ava placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You didn't just fight for yourself, Sienna. You fought for everyone he wronged. And you won. Sienna nodded, a faint smile playing on her lips. She had become the mastermind of Ethan's downfall, but the victory wasn't just hers. It belonged to everyone who had been silenced, overlooked, or betrayed. Though the path had been fraught with challenges, Sienna knew one thing for certain. She was no longer the woman who let others dictate her worth. She had reclaimed her power, and the lessons she had learned would guide her for years to come. In the weeks following Ethan's dramatic downfall, the company underwent a transformation. The atmosphere, once weighed down by fear and favoritism, was now charged with renewed energy. Sienna's actions had set a precedent. Integrity and hard work would no longer be overshadowed by corruption. Employees who had been silenced by Ethan's intimidation began to find their voices, sharing ideas that had been long suppressed. Ethan, on the other hand, faced the full force of his unraveling. The board launched an investigation into his misconduct, uncovering years of unethical behavior. Legal action followed swiftly, and the media caught wind of the scandal, turning Ethan into the cautionary tale of a fallen executive. Stripped of his reputation and barred from future leadership roles, he faded into obscurity. For Sienna, life took on a new rhythm. Her promotion to vice president of marketing was a significant milestone, but it was more than a title. It was a validation of her perseverance and talent. With her new position, she implemented changes that prioritized transparency and collaboration. Her leadership style became a model for others, proving that success didn't require trampling over others. Despite her professional triumphs, Sienna found herself grappling with the moral weight of her actions. On one hand, she felt vindicated, knowing that Ethan's removal had paved the way for a healthier work environment. On the other hand, she couldn't ignore the lingering question: had her pursuit of justice crossed into vengeance? One evening, as she walked through the city, she stopped at a small cafe she used to frequent during the early days of her career. The familiar setting brought back memories of the ambitious but hesitant woman she once was. She thought about the version of herself that would have let Ethan's betrayal go unchecked, too afraid to challenge the status quo. As she sipped her coffee, Ava joined her. "You seem lost in thought," Ava said, sliding into the seat across from her. "I'm just thinking about everything," Sienna admitted. "About what I did, and what it means." "You did what needed to be done," Ava said firmly. "Ethan didn't just hurt you, he hurt all of us. You gave us a chance to rebuild." Sienna nodded, but the question still lingered. What if I became the very thing I despised? What if I let my anger control me? Ava considered this. Maybe. But sometimes anger is what fuels change. You didn't destroy Ethan out of spite. You exposed the truth. And that's what matters. Sienna smiled faintly, finding comfort in Ava's words. The conversation helped her see that while her journey had been fraught with ethical dilemmas, it was ultimately driven by a desire for justice, not revenge. Her thoughts turned to the future. She had reclaimed her career and earned the respect of her colleagues, but her journey was far from over. Sienna decided to mentor young professionals, sharing her experiences to help them navigate the challenges of the corporate world. She also became an advocate for ethical leadership, speaking at conferences and writing articles that challenged toxic workplace cultures. The climactic ending came 1 year later, during the company's annual awards gala. Sienna, now a celebrated leader, was presented with the Innovator of the Year award for her groundbreaking campaigns and transformative leadership. As she stood at the podium addressing the crowd, she reflected on her journey. "This award isn't just for me," she said. "It's for everyone who has ever been silenced, underestimated, or wronged. It's proof that integrity and perseverance can triumph, even in the face of adversity." The applause was thunderous, and as Sienna stepped down from the stage, she felt a sense of closure. Her journey had been arduous, but it had shaped her into a stronger, wiser person. Walking out into the cool evening air, Sienna paused to take it all in. The city lights twinkled above her, a reminder of how far she had come. She had reclaimed her power, not through destruction, but by rebuilding what had been taken from her. As she made her way home, Sienna knew she wasn't defined by the revenge she had enacted, but by the legacy she was creating, a legacy of resilience, justice, and hope. Months had passed since Sienna had firmly established herself as a pillar of leadership in the company. Her new initiatives had reshaped the company culture, and she'd earned the admiration of colleagues and industry peers alike. The satisfaction she once craved, the sense of justice she had sought, seemed to have fully materialized. She had no regrets. Or so she thought. One afternoon, as she was reviewing a new partnership proposal in her office, she received an unexpected email. It was from someone she never thought she'd hear from again. Lena, a former colleague who had quietly disappeared after the chaos surrounding Ethan's downfall. The subject line read, "You should know the truth." Curious, Sienna clicked open the message. It was brief, yet it left her stunned. "Sienna, I know you've moved on, but there's something you need to know about Ethan's fall. It wasn't all you thought it was. There's more to the story. If you want to know the real truth, meet me at the cafe where we used to talk. You might want to hear this before it's too late." Her heart raced. Lena? She'd trusted Lena during those early days of planning her revenge, and then Lena had vanished, leaving no trace. What truth could she be referring to? For a moment, Sienna wondered if this was some kind of trap, another ploy to undermine her. But deep down, something told her that she needed to face whatever was lurking in the shadows. That evening, Sienna walked into the same cafe where she had once questioned her actions. She scanned the room, her nerves making the familiar space feel foreign. Then, at the back corner, she saw Lena. Her former colleague, looking older and wearier, waved her over. "I didn't want to bring this to you, Sienna," Lena began, her voice low. "But you have to know. The whole story about Ethan, about everything that happened. It wasn't just about you." Sienna sat down, her thoughts racing. "What do you mean?" "He betrayed me. He sabotaged my career. You were there. You saw it." Lena shook her head, looking guilty. "I was, but there's more. Ethan didn't act alone. It wasn't just his ambition driving him. There was someone else pulling the strings behind the scenes. The board members you trust, the ones who cheered for your success. They've been manipulating everything. Ethan was just the pawn, and you were part of their plan." Sienna's breath caught in her throat. "What are you saying? That I was played?" Lena nodded. "They knew you were vulnerable. They knew your anger would fuel your actions. When Ethan was brought down, they knew you'd be the perfect replacement. They orchestrated everything, even your rise to power, Sienna. They made you think you were taking control, but in reality, they were using you for their own purposes." Sienna's mind spun. Could it be true? Had she really been the puppet in someone else's game? The idea seemed impossible. She'd fought so hard for what she had. Yet the pieces began to fall into place. The timing of Ethan's downfall, the way she'd been promoted so quickly, the whispers in the hallway. Everything seemed too perfectly aligned. Lena looked at her, eyes filled with remorse. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I had to tell you the truth. You deserve to know that it was never just about you and Ethan. The real players are still out there, and they've already set their sights on a new target. Sienna sat back, stunned. The world around her seemed to tilt. In a cruel twist of fate, the very power she had fought so hard to claim was part of someone else's game all along. The justice she thought she had delivered might have been a mere illusion. As she walked out of the cafe, her thoughts swirled like a storm. For the first time since her victory, Sienna felt uncertain. She had been betrayed by someone she trusted, and now she realized she might have been an instrument in a much larger scheme. But there was one thing she was sure of: this time she wouldn't be a pawn. She would play the game on her own terms. The lesson, however painful, was clear. Revenge, however justified, could never be an isolated act. It was a dangerous game, and in the pursuit of justice, it was easy to become blind to the larger forces at play. Sienna had learned that the truth was often more complicated than it seemed, and sometimes the path to redemption was riddled with more twists than one could ever expect. As the city lights flickered in the distance, Sienna realized that her journey was far from over. There was a bigger battle ahead, one that would require not just intelligence and strategy, but wisdom and vigilance. She had reclaimed her power, but now it was time to truly take control of her future. The stakes were higher than ever, but this time she would be ready.